So hello, New York from Miami. I've just heard that they're anticipating snow in upstate New York this evening. And I was telling Madhavi how in Miami this morning we were warned that there was going to be a cold front. And for us, the cold front is 72 degrees. So different places, it's all weather, different situations, and being able to appreciate and accept all of them.
And
so
here it's in 20s, Waddy Ben.
You're kidding?
Yeah,
oh
it's in
my
20s.
Goodness. Very interesting. And you know, if according to our normal schedule, then this month I and many others from the whole Americas and Caribbean should actually be in upstate New York. But you can't argue with destiny. You know, destiny has decreed something else. And so I think that's one of the foremost things when it comes to this core strength is acceptance of what is. Sometimes you do have to challenge destiny or what is emerging, not because you know, it has to be your way, but sometimes you just have to check to make sure that this is what destiny has decreed or what destiny wants. And so this thing of growing an unshakable core strength, and of course all of the words can be taken apart and examined, and one of the things that we have seen due to the change in everyone's schedule is that many people have taken up gardening. And I've already been involved in that. We're fortunate enough to have a vegetable garden. But someone yesterday, one of our teachers, was showing me her bathroom. And I swear she must have at least 50 solo cups, you know, those red solo cups. She must have about 50 in there, in which she's, you know, the seeds are germinating and they're at that very tender stage before she can take them out and put them in the garden. And it's such a variety of things that that she has. And so when it comes to growing, you know, what is needed? We need soil. The soil has to be good. There has to be fertilizer. There has to be water. There has to be light. And I suppose we could use that as an analogy for when we're trying to grow anything, including strength. And if we're talking about core strength, then there is an emphasis on the need for your core to be strong, physically speaking, in that it is required for good balance, good resistance, and everything else. But in this context, what are we talking about? And I think at one level, there's a line from a famous poem, William Butler Yeats, where he said, "I hear it in the deep heart's core." And maybe that is the thing that has to be strengthened, is our heart. And, you know, what will it look like? What does strength look like? It's not about power. It's not about, you know, being competitive or something like that. But contrary-wise, I think strength in its truest essence is a very subtle thing, is a very sensitive thing, and is not necessarily always apparent. A little bit like those plants that all the work is going on underground, and at some point you see the result of the combination of all of those different things, that what emerges ultimately is the tree, and on the tree there's the flowers, there's the fruits for all to see and even take benefit from. The tree isn't going to eat its own fruit, but it's there for others to nourish themselves with. And so strength doesn't insist, and it isn't controlling, but it's a very soft thing rather than the opposite of it being hard and unyielding. It is very malleable and fluid. And this is, I think, what where we want to get to, is that it's not something that's forced. It's not, as I say, in competition with anybody else. And, you know, what is the image that comes when you think of strength? And usually in terms of nature, many things in nature show that strength, not least the tree. And one of the qualities, I think, of strength that is often overlooked or not valued so much is stability. And it might be undervalued, but stability means reliability, means consistency. It's something that people can rely on, not necessarily that they depend on your stability, but this is, at the moment, nothing is stable, nothing is dependable, nothing is, you can't count on anything. And so for some, yes, that is a challenge. But for some others, it's a challenge that they're willing to take, not a challenge that diminishes them or makes them fail, but rather they step up to the challenge. And I think too, when it comes to growing this strength, then discipline is part of it. But once again, it's not something that's enforced. It may not even be to do with like time, that I have to do, you know, I have to practice so many hours a day or for so many minutes or whatever else. But rather, discipline, I think, even though that aspect is there, but discipline is more to do with, I think, an attitude. And so we'll look at that later, of what is the attitude wherein I need to have discipline. And so when it comes to growing a garden, all of the things that we mentioned that will result in a successful outcome. But of course, we also have to look for weeds. Weeds are one thing, and those can be removed, but it is where rather there are rocks. And the rocks would be where I have grown resentments. And that those resentments, which maybe started off as weeds, but because I nourished them or nurtured them, they then became hard and firm and unyielding. And resentments are very, very dangerous in that they continue, they have an effect on my physical health. And what I have seen, even historically speaking, they are then fed to the next generation, and they begin to carry those resentments as well. And it could be against persons or people or situations. And so it's kind of like, you know, Mary, Mary, quite contrary, how does your garden grow? And so what's in my garden? What is it that I am planting? What is it that I am nourishing? And I was thinking, you know, this thing of this subtle aspect of strength, that it's to do with the soul. And I think that the soul, unfettered, in its original state of being, was sensitive, but not sensitive in terms of a touch me not, but sensitive in terms of intuitiveness, that it was automatically intuitive. It was in harmony with its surroundings, and that it could instantly discern everything just by being intuitive. It wasn't in any danger. But then in a kind of a way, you know, just like, again, sometimes you'll see, and I remember this happened a lot for me in India when I first went, you would see these buildings that had become dilapidated due to lack of care and centuries of having been there. But even in looking at them, you got a sense of their former grandeur and greatness. And I think the soul is a little bit like that too, in that it starts off magnificent, totally strong, totally healthy, sensitive, intuitive, creative, expressive. But then gradually, because of being overly associated with matter in the form of taking on all these different garbs, meaning taking rebirth, that there was a change in the ratio of soul power to physical power. And so that our intuitive nature maybe changed, and instead I became sensitive, in that I was like the touch me not plant, or at the extreme end in relation to others. So I became sensitive in relation to myself, in what you said or what you did. I'm the center of my own attention, and so I react. As regards others, I become desensitized. And then it's like, instead of where there's automatic synchronicity and trust, you know, that my trust also, due to what was happening externally, and then my response to that the trust disappeared, and in its place, either I suppose at one level it could have been gullibility, or in its extreme form, I became cynical, that I would no longer accept the goodness. And then acceptance is another thing. And so, whereas before, able to accept everything for what it was in terms of time and space and whoever, that I rejected what was happening. I questioned everything. But what really was coming into play here, because at a subtle level, I no longer felt that I was able to move things. And so this sense of the need to control, that I wanted to be my way and no other way. And so that the spiritual power that had been there then just becomes a kind of a force, and where my ego predominates, and ego will always insist on having it its way. And what I'm not seeing any longer is the effect of all of what's going on in my garden that not only is it corrupting whatever else might be growing there, but it then manifests in the form of vibrations. And I like to think that one of the things that that I do have some control over, because it's a choice, and that is my vibrations. Now, meditation is going to help me to discern that which is of a high frequency and that which is of a low frequency. And, you know, you can see it even in terms of, you could take even words, you know, and at one level they resonate and they make you feel good, and you're using, you know, just like, say for example, something like what might be a quality is determination, but that quality in its lowest denominator would be stubbornness, right? And so I sometimes tell people, if you want to see your qualities or the potential that you have for qualities, look at your weaknesses, because they're not really your weaknesses. They are the perverted form of what was originally your strengths. That it started off as your strengths, but then when you no longer had the spiritual energy to maintain that, you still wanted to get the same feedback. So instead of the determination, you got stubborn. Instead of, you know, cooperating, you started controlling things to make them your way. And so time at the moment is giving us some of itself, time, in order for us to maybe look on the inside. We no longer have the excuse of, I have to do this, I have to do that, I have to do the other thing. But it's time, because I always feel that the universe, whether you call it the universe or some may call it God, although I will distinguish between the two, but that it's kindly disposed towards us, and it wants to not just get us back to where we started from, but so it's not going back, but it's actually forward motion. But it is reminding myself that that strength is not to be garnered from anything external to myself, not even the most amazing spiritual personality that you can think of. They cannot give it to you. They can certainly mirror it back to you, but it is work that you have to do for yourself. But sometimes in being aware that it's already in me, it's already in that place that is beyond my personality, that is beyond the construct of the societal norms and the limitations that I've imposed on myself, or the criticisms that I've imposed on myself, that core is still there and can be, if you like, dug up and re-emerged once again. And I was thinking, you know, anybody who knows me knows that I have a great deal of love for animals, and not least cats. And so thinking about some of the things, I just used the words cats in terms of what it is that I need to work on to help me to get to that strength. And as mentioned earlier, it's not so much about a discipline, and I need to sit down for 45 minutes in the morning, and I need to sit down for 45 minutes in the evening, but it's about an attitude, just being in the world. And so the attitude, as far as I'm concerned, and you can make up your own acronym and decide what it is that you need to have. And that is compassion, acceptance, trust, and then if I add on S, let's make it cats, then I would say the methodology for the exploration and the excavation of that is silence. That I need silence. And how at the present time that even the world itself is much more silent than it usually is. It's almost like as if it's reciprocating or giving me an opportunity to see that inside my own self. And how to that as I reach for these qualities, as I begin to look at the world and see the other with that acceptance as to who they are or where they are, because not everyone can be at the same place in terms of the journey that we're on. But the attitude of compassion for everybody, and it is whatever, it's just a law. I think we all should know it by now, that whatever it is that you're putting out will return to you. And so in a kind of a way, in reaching for compassion, then it's like saying to the resentments that are in me, move over, or even ultimately get out, because compassion need to fill that space, or acceptance, whatever it is. So as you reach for something higher to create that strength within yourself, then the old things start to be removed. And it is a basic idea within the philosophy of the Brahma Kumaris that we learn from day one, that the focus is never going to be entirely constructive if we only go about it by thinking we have to negate this, we have to erase that, we have to stop the other thing. That is low energy process. Rather, it is about remember who you are, remember that all of the beauty and the creativity and the love and the happiness that you seek are already yours. And so it's a redefining of yourself, giving yourself your original ID, and then reminding yourself that you are that. And so can you see how one is low energy work and the other is going to encourage something else? You keep telling yourself that you're useless or you're afraid or whatever. And it's almost like as if the universe says, okay, that's what you want to believe, then I'll feed that back to you. And so it's like I see with people who even have an attitude of being poor. It doesn't mean that people aren't poor, don't have difficulties in terms of finances and food and everything else. But even then, they can still have a sense of generosity, whatever, the classic hero, that even though they have so very little, they have a willingness to share. And so if I constantly have the thought that I have to hoard and I have to keep it for me because there's going to be a need, well, you will only ever have the fear that it will be taken away from you. Whereas with an attitude of generosity and trusting the universe and time and whatever else. We're not talking now about our politicians or even our religious leaders or anybody else, but trusting even the outcome of your own story. It's almost like as if that subtlety and that trust, something beyond faith, that it will reciprocate and that you will begin to feel its bounty and its magnificence. And to the extent where you no longer even have to worry about getting rid of this or diminishing that or proving something, but gradually your persona begins to change. The worry diminishes, the fear. Someone said recently, and I liked it very much, that, and I know we won't have time to get into it now, but that anger is to do with the past. And I would say along with that, the anger is usually a manifestation of some hurt that has been done in the past. And that fear is to do with the future. But being in the present, means to be soul conscious, to be aware of yourself as an eternal and immortal being who has everything that is needed for this moment, and to develop your own core of strength. And I suppose in a kind of a way, just like if the plant is to grow and evolve, then it needs good soil. And I think a very important thing is the company that you keep, because some company will serve to affirm everything negative that you believe about others, even about yourself. And so it requires that little bit of courage to go for the company that is going to give you a different image of yourself. Mostly, I would hope, of that which at the core of you is really good and is spiritual and is subtle, but through the strength of that you are not overly sensitive even then to hearing maybe something that might be a little bit critical, and you're not taking it as criticism, but rather as something that you have to self correct. And so the importance then of company, of what it is that you're, the whole, I was in the grocery store the other day, and the lady who was bagging the groceries, she says, "Oh, how are you? And what kind of a day are you having?" I said, "A wonderful day." And she said something about, these times and everything. I says, "Yes, there's a lot of time." "Oh," she says, "you must be able to watch a lot of television." And I said, "I don't have a television." And she said, "You don't? What do you do then?" And so ultimately she took a card for the meditation center. And so it's like that. Discipline is very connected, I think, with an awareness of time. I was sharing how in the Brahma Kumaris, Thursday is very special. And it's the one day early in the morning when I guess it's the closest you could come in the Brahma Kumaris to a ritual. And so because I am here by myself and nobody is able to come, then I find that I have to do everything. And so I've been enjoying the discipline of that, of getting up earlier than normal, and it's to do with food, it's to do with flowers, it's to do with preparation. You yourself have to be ready and so on. And the feeling was that what is it that made me have that discipline? It's an awareness of time, that everything has to be done and ready by this particular time on the clock. And so the awareness of the time that we're now in, and there's never been a better time to reach for that strength or for that change in your own self. And that's what I think Madhavi and the Brahma Kumaris as an international body are here to do, as brothers and sisters of the whole of humanity. It's like just to present something to you that you ultimately will be able to do for yourself. Om Shanti. I think we're going to have a little meditation now. Is that right, Madhavi?
Yeah, sure. Mr. Waddy. Yeah.
So, all right, we'll have a little meditation for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Something else I heard, that the idea of the drop of water meeting the ocean, and the drop of water was frightened that in joining the ocean, it would lose its individuality. And the ocean simply said to the drop, when you fall into the ocean, or when you come into the ocean, you become the ocean. And so meditation is an invitation from the ocean. Its strength, its ability to accommodate, and in this instance, not the physical ocean, but that divine presence that is of light, and of love, of warmth, understanding, acceptance. And I, the drop, the tiny soul, hesitant, wondering, and then in simply being quiet, all other thoughts ceasing, I have made space for that higher energy to reach me. And even embrace me. it's as if I am folded in. No resistance. And peace begins to flow through me. Becoming comfortable with and in my own self. And the whisper, is it my voice? Is it the voice of the ocean? I am peace. I am light. I am at home. Om Shanti.
Thank you, Sister Waddy. I just wanted to share that I really liked how you have put this whole aspect of strength is about strengthening the heart, and how strength is not something that is hard and rigid, but it is very soft. It is like fluid, you said. I really like that. And one of the qualities of strength is stability, you said. And this whole journey of the soul, how we have actually started, expressive, creative, being magnificent, um, and um, and all of this actually um, led the soul to be intuitiveness, you said. Well, the soul actually started the journey being intuitive. But then as the soul kept playing the part, where the soul got overly engaged with the matter around, and rather than being intuitive, somewhere our that strength actually changed into kind of weakness, which is like you said, sensitive, being sensitive. We started picking up things, and how you gave the example of being determined. We may have started with the original quality, the strength of the soul, having determination, and somewhere that determination, the extreme end of determination is stubbornness, as a sensitive nature of the soul. So also to keep an eye on the weeds, and how one of the weeds could be resentment, you said, where the soul can lose a lot of strength. And as you had mentioned, it is kind of dangerous to have this resentment, because it not only affects our physical health, but we are also giving that to our next generation, where the generations are taking, we're passing on this resentment to the next. So to keep an eye on this this sensitive quality of hanging on to things, and where we're losing that strength. And I really liked what you said about challenging the destiny yesterday, and you also touched upon the trust aspect, And yesterday we had Dadi Janki's one of the, sharing on trust. And she said, have trust in yourself. And she said the second aspect was destiny. She said, I really like trust destiny. Your destiny is high. Your destiny is powerful. So as you just mentioned, that when you see that you have it, and universe will give you back. You said, when you say I don't have it, I'm always poor, or I can't do this, then that's why I'm blessed by the universe. Yes, then it becomes, that becomes my kind of my destiny. So trusting the destiny, challenging. So when you say challenging the destiny, is like, yes, I'm going to do it, right? I'm going to be on it, no matter what weeds or what comes in my way, going for it, right?
Yeah, it's like the situation at, I suppose, that idea of the best of times and the worst of times, that for some, this particular situation that we're going through, for some it will be the death of them, and for some it will be the elevation of them. And but also, I mean, I've seen situations where it's not just, sometimes people think that if everything's destiny, then it's almost like a weakness, or that you're not active in any way. But I'm remembering situations where, say, for instance, somebody was refused a visa, for example, and then you just go, oh, well, that's it, destiny. But no, just go back and check. It may not be destiny, in other words, that if you had wanted a different outcome. And so there are situations where you have to challenge it a little bit. As I say, it's not because you have to have it your way, but you get a sense, there's an intuitive sense that is not the ultimate outcome. It's something else. So you challenge it in that way. Yeah.
Very nice.
You're very good at summarizing. My goodness. You should have been a reporter.
I think got used to actually listening.
Yeah, you're good.
Thank you, Mr. Watts. So we'll just open up for any, let me actually unmute you all.
So are you going to remember cats?
So, one second, Waddy Ben, let me unmute you 1 second. Yes. So you were saying something, Sister Waddy?
Yeah, I was saying, are you going to remember cats? The compassion and the acceptance.
Yeah.
And trust. I think they're really, really important. And so that's the discipline. The discipline isn't, an external thing of sitting down or making time, but it's like, it's going on. It's just like in the garden, it's growing all the while, and I just see it like on the days here when I haven't had time to go out and water, for instance, and we're in a very dry spell at the moment, and you go out and the vegetables the greens are all hanging like this, because you haven't watered them. And so that if it has the right component, it will keep growing by itself, Yeah, that's the discipline. So it's in here, the discipline is.
Yeah, I think even this point that you've shared, that it's not about, I am doing Raj Yoga or I sit to meditate, to fulfill a certain desire or certain way of discipline, but connecting to the soul and the reality of the soul, the qualities of the soul. Yeah. There is so much strength inside to get that flourishing.
Yeah.
So, Alice, beautiful.